Hello, I'm Justin Lowe at the Wausau Wellness Center. I'm here with our good friend Patrick Theut once again. Yes, of course, he is famous. You know from this channel that he has given some other presentations about curing heart disease. And we just, for those who might be first-time viewers, we just want to go over that story briefly.
Sure.
It was a few years ago that Patrick was diagnosed with severe heart disease.
Yes.
And and was actually given a diagnosis that he might die soon.
Yes.
And Patrick is an engineer here in the area, and he decided to take a look at what was going on, figure it out, and reverse his heart disease, and give us the brief story of how that went. It took a couple of years to investigate, and
Well, basically what happened was in November 13th of 2002, yes, going on 18 years now, I went to a very prestigious clinic in Minneapolis, just south of the Twin Cities, and they gave me less than 4 years to live. I had a calcium score of 337 in my left main. I had no other calcification in the rest of my heart. My left main was completely calcified from the wall to the branches. And I had a unique genetic issue in that when my arteries, let's just say, plug up, I don't like that term, but just calcify, my body's reaction to that is to make my arteries larger to compensate for the lack of blood flow. That would lead to an arterial blowout, which what killed my mother's mother, my grandmother's brothers and sisters and everything else. So it was really genetic. And in fact, a number of my great uncles died right around my age of arterial blowouts. So the clinic said, good luck, we can't do anything for you. And if you collapsed in the lobby, you have 20 minutes and then you're gone. So as I said to the attending cardiologist, and thank God for the clinic, they did a lot of really good things for me. But I like to laugh about this stuff, but because if you don't laugh about it, it's
but it was serious at the time.
Oh God, yeah, it was very serious. And I said to the physician, the attending cardiologist, my body got me into this mess. My body's going to get me out of this mess. And he later had a conversation with another friend who was in another department at that clinic, and he thought I had a problem with denial and a bunch of other psychological things. And my friend, who happened to be a psychologist, said, no, you really should have looked at his eyes. He's got that look, and if anybody's going to figure this out, it's going to be him. So from November 13th to now, I have worked diligently to solve this problem. And it's a multi-headed dragon. It's just not one thing. It's just not take this pill and all good things happen. So
you did a lot of testing and a lot of research and figured out the necessary steps
Right.
in order to cure your heart disease. And of course, you're sitting here 18 years later.
Right.
And of course, in very good health, as
Right.
I can see, and as you have gotten tested in the past. That's great. Now, when you took your deep dive into heart disease and blood lipids and all of the different things that occur, you came up with kind of your engineer's definition of the problem. You're an engineer.
Right.
You want to take a look at a very systematic approach.
Right.
And what is your basic definition of the problem?
It's unbelievably simple. And I sent a letter to a friend in Tiburon, California back in January of 2003. And I said, heart disease is a gut bacteria problem. It has to be. See, as a biochemical engineer, I got my master's in it. And my specialty is systems control and systems instrumentation. So in other words, I would be the guy that would design the cruise control for your car or the anti-lock braking system. So it's all about analytical, root cause failure analysis. And as an engineer, you always ask one simple question: what changed? If diet is so bad, then there shouldn't be a teenager hitting age 21. But that ain't happening. So what changed? So I took that model of root cause failure analysis and I approached my heart disease that way. And by the end of April of 2003, I had identified approximately 15 different things that need to be right in order to prevent heart disease. As an example, one of the first things I discovered, thanks to the World Health Organization,
Yeah.
they had a great slide deck
Okay.
of heart disease from the equator to the North Pole. And it goes up exponentially. And they said, isn't this fascinating? And I looked at it as an engineer, and I go, what changed?
The sun.
Sun! Bingo!
Sun. I believe that's true with cancer incidents too.
That's
that
correct.
Around the equator, less cancer incidents, and North Pole, more.
That's correct. And then once you get past the North Pole, it collapses. And I'm sitting there going, that's got to be D. It has to be.
Vitamin D3.
Right,
Exactly.
vitamin D3. So in like January or February of 2003, I attempted to get my blood work done just for vitamin D. That was like pulling teeth. I had to drive from Upper Michigan all the way to Milwaukee to a draw clinic just to get my D checked. And my D was like 18 or 15. And I looked at that, and then I went digging to find what vitamin D levels were for people at the equator. I said, that's a good place to start. And I went, theirs is between 40 and 80, and I'm going, I'll take 60. That's where I need to be. And then trying to get vitamin D caps
At that time.
in 2003.
And, yeah, I suppose. Especially high dose.
Oh yeah, I could find 2 doses, one 1,000 IUs, and then the same company made a 50,000 IU.
Nothing in between. Huh?
Nothing in between. I said, well, here we go.
Here we go.
And then I realized that magnesium had played a role in all of this, and thyroid had a role in it. I remember in February, my then wife said to me, what are you staying up for? I says, I found this really great peer-reviewed article. It looks like thyroid has something to do with heart disease. And it did. Again, this is just scratching the surface. But at that point, I really started to dig in. And you could say, well, most engineers don't dig in like this. Well, in college, I was on the forensics and debate team. So I loved digging and looking at information to connect the dots. I love connecting the dots. So I kept digging and and a ketogenic diet is critical.
Yeah, and one of the main things you mentioned is insufficient vitamin K, like vitamin K7, but all of the forms of K.
Right. So
that was something you found was pretty critical.
Right. I found that out in 2010, but I instinctively did something in research. It said people who eat a lot of broccoli and kale, okay, and I forgot what else they mentioned about natto, and I'm going, what's this and what's in it? But my body loved it. I was on a ketogenic diet. I peeled off like 30, 40 pounds of insulation, and but my body craved this stuff, and I just couldn't figure out why. But everything was doing good. Then after 3 years, I went back and I'd been getting a lot of heart scans in between, and all of a sudden my left main was completely clear.
Cleared up.
Completely cleared up, and everything was going in the right direction. And then I got a vaccination. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, okay? I remember, I'm an engineer. What changed? That changed.
And it just seemed to correlate at
Yes,
the time. Okay.
and in the engineering world, there's no such thing as coincidence. It just is. Well, as we now know with gut bacteria, some of the latest research, this has just been published a few months ago, on vitamin K and gut bacteria, that they use mice models. You give high dose antibiotics, it wipes out, of all things, the K producing bacteria.
Yeah, you mentioned that at the beginning of this particular portion of the video, that gut bacteria was very important.
It's critical.
Because not only does it influence the metabolism of vitamin K, but I know neurotransmitters for your brain and everything. It's very, very critical. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, so goes your gut, so goes your body. Think about it this way. You got somewhere between 400 and 4,000 different critters living in your gut. And you've got more cells in your gut than you do in your whole body. And nobody can tell you what those cells are going to do, but they're designed to do what your body wants done. Wow.
It's a very symbiotic
unbelievable.
relationship there.
For instance, vitamin D is one of the, how shall I put this, a signaling chemical that tells your gut bacteria to liberate calcium. So you can eat all the calcium you want, but if your body says we don't need it, it goes right through.
Goes right through, yeah. Well, part of the story too is that there are many things that you did to cure your heart disease. It was a remarkable story, to get back into great shape. Is that you created an actual vitamin K supplement,
Right?
And the reason
right.
for that, I think, was that there wasn't a real good vitamin K product on the market.
There was a good vitamin K product, but more importantly, when I had that vaccination, my heart disease came back terribly.
Oh.
I mean, and by 2010, I was not exactly a happy camper. So what I did was, I said, obviously, I overlooked something, and I took complete ownership. Well, that's one thing about health. Take ownership in your health, and that's why you have health stores like this. Take ownership in your health. So I said, okay. So I locked myself in my house, and I spent 110 man hours going back through all of my tests and all of the papers that I read, just trying to see what I missed, because I know I missed something, and I knew it had to do with my gut, but I just didn't know what. So a couple years earlier, a holistic MD friend in Traverse City, she ordered a battery of tests for me that she wanted done. And I said, sure. And guess what one of the tests was? K1.
Huh.
And because I had stumbled across a Mercola comment, and then a comment by, I know Dr. Bill Davis pretty well.
Yeah.
And he had told me years earlier that natto makes a difference, and it was just a passing comment. And I'm going,
But it clicked.
at that point, I said, oh, my. So I started doing a deep dive in July, right around my birthday of 2010. I did a deep dive, and I realized K is the key. And at that point, then I went off to find K, and I couldn't find any.
Yeah.
And then so I went ahead and developed my own brand just for myself.
And at one point, I think people were taking just one form of vitamin K, or that was all that was on the marketplace
K1
20 years ago, maybe.
K1 was common in the marketplace at, I think it was 5 or 10 milligrams. And what was really funny, my cousin is a veterinarian, and I wanted to get some K, like right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I says, hey, can you sell me some K? I can't. Why? I need I gotta have a prescription.
Yeah,
I said,
there's
Jesus.
Legal hoops. Right,
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff.
crazy. So finally, I eventually went to the what's called Supply Side West Vitamin Show, and then I felt almost. This sounds crazy, but I felt almost like Cheech and Chong in East LA. I just trying to score a key of MK7 and a key of MK4 and a key of K1.
Sure.
And I eventually did it. So being the analytical guy that I am, I says, okay, I got all my good stuff. So I read all the literature about how much to take, and I said, okay, if this works, I'm going to take a statin. So I took a statin, and I dropped my LDL deliberately. Now remember, I'm getting my blood work done every 3 to 4 months,
Okay.
year round. I'm just being tested. And I went, okay, my LDL was at 60. I said, okay, now if I take K, and my body likes K, and my liver is happy with K, and my body has a demand for K, and K is carried on your LDL and HDL, then, by logic, my God, my LDL should go up regardless of what the statin that I'm taking. My HDL should go up even more, and then it should stabilize. And if I'm really right about this, if I go off the statin, nothing will change. So that's what I did, and that's what happened. I went, yes, I'm onto it. And then 6 months later, my score started to come down.
Well, that's a great story, and the product is called Koncentrated K.
Concentrated K,
And
right.
you can find it online. Also, he mentioned the wellness store like this,
Right.
and that's the Wausau Wellness Center,
Right.
where it is sold as well, the Concentrated K. You can get it for yourself to improve perhaps your heart disease, but there are many things you should be doing, and you have a famous graph that you have shown many times at different presentations of a multi-headed dragon.
Yes.
You even mentioned it earlier,
Right.
and it mentions all of the different things that you should or could be doing in order to cure your heart disease. We're looking at the graphic right now, and there's probably 15 different things on there.
Right.
You mentioned trace metals.
Right.
That's something, if you're not getting trace metals, then you're probably going to not have as good of heart health.
Like selenium.
And yeah, selenium, like that, magnesium. And then also your diet. A lot of people think they can just take a tablet, eat whatever they want,
Right.
and you're going to be fine.
Right.
Now, you're on a ketogenic diet, but even just small improvements in the diet
Makes huge differences.
Huge difference, yeah. And then also insulin and glucose, making sure that's in the right range, correct?
Don't eat junk food.
What about something much that people see on this graphic is pretty self-explanatory. What about this Theut A? You mentioned that in a few of your presentations. If you could give us a simple explanation of why that's important.
Okay. There's an awful lot of hooey out there, and very gross generalizations on how things work. So, make a long story short, and this is, by the way, all peer-reviewed literature, so I'm not talking through my hat. Theut A is a carrier protein. What's a carrier protein? It's like the UPS. It drives around your blood, hauling calcium all over your body.
Is that what it mainly does, is calcium?
That's only what it does.
That's all it does?
It's just a calcium carrier. So Theut A, make a long story short, gets stimulated by MK7. Okay? Theut A then, and I'm making this, it's really explained really well in the Cardiac Manifesto Part 2 on my website, k-vitamins.com. It's explained really well there. But Reader's Digest version. MK7 stimulates it to come in through the epithelial layer and grab onto the calcium and pull it back through and either take it to the liver or take it to the bone.
So basically, calcified arteries, Theut A is going to help remove that calcium.
Right, and your liver makes all the Theut A you need.
And essentially that's what you figure what helped with your calcified arteries.
I term it reverse calcium transport.
Sure.
And in order to get the calcium loosened up, you have to have sufficient magnesium. Now, how much is sufficient magnesium? You get a red blood cell magnesium test, which is very similar to HbA1c for your sugar levels. And you want to be at the high end of the range that you see in your blood work or a little higher. That guarantees that you have sufficient magnesium in your system. Now, magnesium plus B6, guess what that does? No kidney stones.
Oh.
You get kidney stones, that's an indication that your
B6 and magnesium aren't in the right levels.
Right, and it's allowing your body to do really dumb things.
Oh, okay.
So,
like deposit calcium or other things in your kidneys.
Exactly. So the Theut A is never talked about, and one of the big deals with people on dialysis, they do not die of kidney disease. Most people in dialysis die of heart disease. And they trace this back to, in the dialysis, they remove the Theut A. And they're even looking at how to make a synthetic Theut A. Gee, I wonder why. My.
You could probably naturally do it.
Well, your liver just does it.
Obviously, your liver does it.
Just does it.
But, of course, in the marketplace, people are always looking to come up with a new therapeutic. Right, yeah.
But for people with severe chronic kidney disease, hey, more hats off to them. Give them anything to help them out.
Exactly. Well, when you get to that stage, you need the help. That's right. Okay. Now, in the previous videos, also you mentioned what some of the things that you take, and we already kind of brushed by a few things, but a lot of people commented in previous videos. They wanted to know, okay, what do you take every day? So if we could just run down that here quickly to give us an idea. We have a graphic of some of these things as well on the screen.
Concentrated
K, 2 tablets a day.
Two concentrated Ks a day, and then I take 2 Armour thyroid meds at a grain each, so it's 2 grains total. And why? My thyroid doesn't work, and if your thyroid doesn't work, you tend to get heart disease. I take 20,000 IUs a day, but then again, that's me and my body, how I have dialed my body in. So I'm an engineer, so test.
That's right. What is it like 50 nanograms per mole, or what is the typical range that most vitamin D experts say your blood should be in? I think.
Well, in 2002, it was less than 20.
Right.
Now it's less than 35, I think. The latest published stuff to prevent respiratory distress, they're talking about, and it's a peer-reviewed article I just read 2 nights ago, 60 to 70 nanograms per milliliter for your blood levels.
Nanograms per milliliter for your blood levels, and some people might need to take less or more vitamin D3 in order to get in that range. So that's why you're saying
I'll give you an example. My Aunt Phyllis, at the time she was 90 years old, she's still perking along, and she takes 1K a day, and she has no dementia issues either.
Great.
That's because of the K1, but that's another story. Because she has somewhat of a sedentary lifestyle, her D levels, she was taking 10,000 a day. Her D levels were at 120. And she says, that's a little high. I said, well, it's not that bad. But so she went down to 5,000 and it came down to 80.
Okay.
Okay, great. Me, I'm an athlete. I'm a master's track athlete. I pole vault for fun. And when I learned working with world-class athletes, they burn D as fast as they burn glucose. So athletes typically have low D levels. That's why the Olympics are typically in August. This is research that was done in the 1920s and 30s about
for vitamin
Summer
Olympics,
D
anyway.
for the Summer Olympics because they saw that D levels improve performance. Turns out it does. So for my body, I need 20,000 a day. Okay, dial it in. And I take 100 micrograms of selenium, and I take 500 milligrams of quercetin or quercetin.
Yeah.
Now you would say, are you doing that because of COVID? I was doing that 5 years ago, before COVID, because I had learned that it was a good way to drive zinc into your cells to
Which
kill
you
viruses.
also take about 50 milligrams
50
zinc.
milligrams of zinc. And I take 3 milligrams of copper to balance out the zinc. Just don't take zinc. You got to balance it.
Or just don't take copper.
Right.
Yeah, too much copper is
It's,
bad.
yeah, it's equally as bad.
That's one thing you gotta kind of look into this. I mean, there's no real. Usually, there's not a high dose of one supplement that you're going to take, and you think it's going to cure all. It's usually
Exactly.
going to take things out of balance, out of whack.
Right.
So this is a very balanced daily regimen that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with selenium. How much is too much? I don't know. 100 micrograms for me works perfect.
So your daily selenium is 100 micrograms. Okay.
Oh my God, don't take 100 milligrams.
No.
Oh, in fact, I don't think you can afford it if you want.
Yeah. Right.
I take 5 grams of magnesium malate. That gives me just a fuzz under 1 gram a day of magnesium as magnesium.
Okay.
Why malate? It's the best bowel tolerated. But that's just me. Experiment with it.
There are different forms of some supplements like orotate or malate, or and sometimes different forms can affect your digestion. You know,
it's your gut bacteria.
Exactly.
You got to make your gut bacteria happy. So, one other thing, you read a lot of these stories about people taking K and it's not found in the system and all that stuff. They forget one thing: gut bacteria love vitamin K. So you make your gut bacteria happy first. In fact, all vitamins, you make your gut bacteria happy first, and then they will be very happy to you. I take 6 grams of C. How much C do you take? Again, 2 to 4 grams for most people. Some people need divided doses, 2 grams every 4 hours, 6 grams every 4 hours.
That is something that I've read recently, is that many people who recommend vitamin C say, hey, don't just take it all in the morning,
Right.
whatever you're taking of vitamin C, like 6 grams, or 10 grams or 2 grams or whatever. You should spread it out.
Absolutely. And the reason why you spread it out is for your gut bacteria. Those boys are there to help you, but there's some things that just overwhelms them, and they just say, we're not happy. And then you have what I call an outhouse opportunity.
Well, vitamin C is water soluble too, right? Isn't it excreted from your body fairly quickly?
And yes, but there's a reason for that. If it was left in your body, it would get very toxic very quick. Vitamin C, like I tell people, it's like, imagine you buy a new car and you park your car in your garage, and every night the dealer comes in and changes your oil and changes your tires and changes your filters, and your car is just like new the next morning. That's what vitamin C does. It basically changes your oil every day when you take it. So take it. It's nothing wrong with that. And one of the ways of finding out how much C to take, I test, is you look at how much C is coursing around certain animals that make C on their own, especially primates.
Yeah.
And then you look at C to observe how much C gorillas need. And
For just historical perspective here, it was people don't make vitamin C. Human beings don't
Right.
make their own vitamin C in their body, but many other animals do,
Right.
because it's so critical.
right,
So at some point in our evolutionary past, we must have started eating enough vitamin C that our body stopped maybe producing.
it was a genetic
doing
defect they
something.
traced back, I don't know how many tens of thousands of years.
Interesting story, though.
It really is. And but yeah, so I also take tocotrienol. That's comes from the annatto bean, and that
125 milligrams.
125 milligrams.
Okay.
Now you say, why do you do that? Well, you need to understand that your LDL, HDL, and VLDL carry your fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin D has its own carrier protein, and vitamin A has its own carrier protein, but LDL and HDL and VLDL carry everything else, which is your CoQ10. Oh yeah, I take 200 milligrams of CoQ10 in the ubiquinol form.
Okay.
And if you're working out, take 400. So why do I do that? CoQ10 is carried on your HDL. CoQ10 is used to anchor the HDL particle onto the foam cell to allow it to suck the foam out of the foam cell. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
It's part of your engineering deep dive into how
yeah.
the heart disease worked and,
Right.
and what things
Right.
will take out
Right.
or reverse the damage that has occurred.
Exactly. So your LDL carries MK4, MK7, the other MKs that your gut bacteria make. And they carry it all over your body, and they drop it off, and they come back, and get reprocessed, and away we go again. It's pretty neat how that works. Let's see. I also take 6 grams of fish oil. Let's see.
Melatonin at night.
I take
sublingual.
sublingual melatonin. Take 4 of those bad boys. I think it's the raspberry flavored or the strawberry flavored. And then I take.
There's a cherry flavored one.
That's the one. That's the one. The cherry flavored one.
It comes naturally. Melatonin occurs naturally in cherries, so I wonder if that's how many melatonin supplements taste like cherry.
Yep.
Also, something that I know some people are a little bit controversial about, and that's DHEA.
I take DHEA because my levels were low, and I take 1 DHEA pill and it gets it right to my mid-range. So I said, if I'm at mid-range, I'm happy.
Sure.
I take
Pregnenolone.
pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is a memory hormone, and all of the hormones in your body is made from pregnenolone. So I always like to keep a nice reserve of pregnenolone with me. And as I'm working out, I take lysine, about 3 grams of lysine and 6 grams of citrulline.
And that's something that people who aren't athletes don't necessarily probably need to take that much?
Not that much. A couple of grams of lysine and a couple of grams of citrulline. Citrulline is really cool in that it's a pituitary hormone stimulator, HGH stimulator, and it's also a nitric oxide generator.
Have a good one. We'll see you
And
next
your
time.
body will take your citrulline
Yep.
and make it into the amount of arginine it needs.
Oh,
It's kind of like beta carotene. Some people have beta carotene conversion issues genetically, but if you take beta carotene or eat a carrot a day, your body will make all the A it needs based on your D and K levels.
so that's how they're interconnected again.
They're all
That's why you
interconnected.
have to watch many different things if you really want to improve your health.
Yeah, in the world of process control, the human condition is known as a busy system.
Yes,
It's a
yeah.
real
Well,
busy system.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a few things here for people to kind of, and most of it is on the screen here for people. But if you had to pick out, like, say, 6, I imagine that a normal person who has a limited budget, you probably recommend the K, fish oil, D3.
No, not fish oil.
Not fish oil? No.
No, I'll give you this. The fish oil is important if you've got triglyceride issues. And it's just good to take. But if you, and I've had people ask me this, Pat, I don't have any money. What do I do? I
Or a limited budget.
Right. I says, take your K.
Okay.
Do that get your D right.
D.
Get your magnesium right. And get your thyroid right.
And those are
And
kind of
get
the
your
big,
and get your CoQ10 right.
and those are the biggest ones you would say.
Those are the
basically.
5.
Okay.
Those are the 5.
Great.
And the older you get, the less CoQ10 you make.
Yeah, I know, and that's a lot of the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that your body makes less vitamin D3 as you get older.
Yes.
And it makes less CoQ10, and you absorb less B12 as you get older.
That's correct.
And things like that a lot of I don't know, a lot of health practitioners don't really think about. That those levels of those nutrients get lower as you age, and that's why supplementation is sometimes very effective.
Well, for example, when you're 70 years old, you make 10% of the amount of D that you made when you were 17 for the same amount of sun exposure.
Yeah.
And we can extrapolate this into the COVID thing. There's a serious, well, it's serious. Get your D up.
Yeah, get your D up. I mean, published studies. We don't have to be coy about it. I mean, there are several published studies all over the world that have shown vitamin D3 is beneficial when dealing with COVID.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no question about that in the published literature that I've seen whatsoever.
Right. And what else is interesting, and this just came to light about 3 months ago, was we've all heard about the microclots with COVID. Turns out, in part, remember it's a busy system.
It is.
In part, your MK7 carboxylates protein S. If protein S is not carboxylated, what does it form? Microclots.
Microclots.
Now, why, if you're taking your let's say you're eating your leafy greens like your kale, your body is only going to have so much MK7 around, and the body will always take the MK7 and put it where it's needed. It's called triage biochemistry. The body is always shunting chemicals to where it's needed the most. So when you have a viral infection in your cell, your mitochondria or it really get walloped. So what is the first two things that really get screwed up in your cell? Because of the peroxides generated, CoQ10, which is generated inside the cell. So when that level starts to drop, the body sends a message out, help me.
Yeah.
So it starts to shunt the MK7 in there to make up for the lack of CoQ10 to keep the peroxides down, to keep the cell alive. That explains, in part, why it's taken away from you carboxylating the protein S, which is on the surface of your epithelial cells in your arteries.
Sure.
My.
It's how it's so connected. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right. And am I what I say absolutely perfect? No. But you know what?
It is the biochemistry.
There's something going on,
Yeah, there is.
and it just doesn't. There's no such thing as magic.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know what? I wanted to just kind of ask now, it's been 18 years, and I know you've gone through kind of how you've changed certain aspects of your diet and your supplementation. Anything recently, like the first videos you made here on this channel were 2 or 3 years ago or more. Any little tweaks that you realized recently that you want to share with people, or anything you changed in your exercise pattern, or...
No, I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of OCD about stuff. Whatever works, I keep on doing it, and I've been unbelievably consistent with all of this stuff.
And as far as your blood work goes, everything looks normal, where you want it at this point?
Yeah, first week October, I'll get my annual blood work. I used to get it 4 times a year, but I can't afford it now. So I do my annual, plus I've dialed my body in. So we've all had blood drawn. My record is 63 tubes in one sitting. This setting will be somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. And they say, why are you doing this? And like I want to emphasize, I own my health. Period. I own it.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to do myself in, I'm going to do myself in. It's not that I don't trust people, but it starts first with ownership. It's like driving a car. You watch out for the other guy, right? You never assume the other guy ain't going to hit you, right?
That's true.
So take ownership in how you drive, take ownership in your health.
Yeah, when you get blood work, it's really blood work. You know, get
right.
a lot of different things measured,
Right.
and that way you can really figure it out. I mean, if you can afford to get even just one blood test, there are some comprehensive ones out there that require just one blood draw, but it gives you a lot of information.
Well, if you were going to get a blood draw, again, red blood cell magnesium, free T3, vitamin D, CoQ10. That's good for starters.
Yeah, sure.
It just,
Right.
I call that putting air in the tires. Let's just see where that takes you.
Yeah, well, it makes the car run a lot smoother. Put air in the tires. that's for
Exactly.
sure.
It always
Getting the
does.
oil changed.
Getting the oil change.
Like we mentioned with the vitamin C, right?
Exactly. But,
Sure.
people are on limited budgets. So if you want to do anything for your heart disease, that would be it.
Yeah. Get a test and figure out what your levels of different heart disease important, supplements and nutrients that you could
Right.
eat. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Patrick, thanks you so much for coming on here and
Thanks for
explaining
having
once
me.
again. The supplement is Koncentrated K, and our center is the Wausau Wellness Center. You can buy it online, or you can stop by the store. Thanks again.
I have a lot of my friends shop here,
Yeah, that's right.
and they love it. It's a great place.
Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and hopefully we'll have some videos again coming up in the future.
Yeah.